Okay, seems like we got a bit of a catastrophe on our hands right now, and was just out with the horses and was thinking about things, and I thought I'd like to maybe share some thoughts that have occurred to me over the last 60 years. It seems to me that one of the reasons we have the disaster that we're in, and prior to that, all the political problems and infighting and tremendous enmity between the right and the left, was because we lack a context in which to address the issues. When I was young, I learned that there was a difference between the principles and the issues. And when you understood the principles, the issues were all easy to solve. And I think the principles we're missing, there's three of them. The first is, what's the context of all this? What's the meaning, not just of this life, but of existence? And the second is, what's the ultimate truth of the universe? And third is, what's the nature of man? And it's those three I'd like to address. Visiting Greece a few years back, I discovered that emblazoned above the portals to Apollo's temple at Delphi were the words Tempus Nose. Now, there were many things emblazoned there, but those are the important ones. Tempus Nose means know thyself. And when I became aware of that, I asked myself, well, all right, Greg, well, who are you? What are you? Why are you? Where are you? When are you? How are you? Who are you? If I'm going to know myself. And at the time I was pretty interested in physics. I still am. Physics is the basics. It's the basic science. It's the science from which everything else arises. Chemistry, botany, biology, everything arises out of physics, because physics is the study of energy. And so I discovered that whatever else in the universe I might be, I am for sure energy. And so I got deep into energy and I started studying energy, and I learned that energy is very informational. And one of the things that we know about energy is that the first law of thermodynamics is that it cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed. And from this principle, this truth, arises, if you will, our eternal nature. We can't be created or destroyed, we can only be changed. And then I discovered that energy had a wavelength, which is the distance between two crests in the waveform of energies. The waveform of energy, there's the distance between two crests, we call it the wavelength, and the shortest wavelength in the universe is Planck's distance, which is 1.618 times 10 to the negative 35 of a meter. It's extremely small. And the longest wavelength is the length of the entire universe. And then I discovered that the energy form, or the waveform of energy, also has an amplitude, which is the distance between a trough and a crest. And again, the smallest amplitude is Planck's distance, 1.618 times 10 to the negative 35 of a meter, and the widest amplitude is the width of the entire universe. That's a big spectrum. And then I discovered there's a frequency, which is the number of times a crest passes a fixed point over time. We measured that in Hertz cycles. I discovered that energy had an intensity that dissipates according to the inverse square law from point of origin. I discovered a lot more about energy, but suffice it to say that energy is extremely informational. And so I discovered that I am energy and I am information. And the reason there are cowboy hats or eyeglasses or birthday cake or popcorn is because of the way the dials are turned. And so I discovered that I'm energy and information, but I thought, well, I'm different than this cowboy hat or these eyeglasses. And I thought, well, what's the difference? And I thought, well, there's this, it seems like the difference to me is consciousness. And so I started studying consciousness, and I discovered that a lot about consciousness. I discovered that it is a true mystery. It's really the only mystery in the universe. But I learned a little bit about self-consciousness, and I discovered that self-consciousness begins when you develop the skill to differentiate yourself from your environment. And consciousness is fulfilled when you comprehend the universe. And in between those two states is the meaning of existence. In other words, if you are energy, information, and consciousness, the only possible meaning of existence is infinite experience. I mean, what do you do for 100 years? What do you do for 1,000 years? What do you do for 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000 or a quintillion years? Well, one lifetime, one dimension of reality, you might want to surf, and then you might want to be a plumber, or then you might want to study germ theory and viruses, or fill in the blank. But the point, the meaning of existence, indeed the only possible meaning, if you are energy, information, and consciousness, and the great assumption is that you retain your identity, is infinite experience. And so as you go about creating your existence, creating your life or lives, the only gracious way of being or modality of existence, amongst other sovereign intelligent beings, is liberty. Liberty is really not understood now in a country that was founded on it. It's deliberately not taught in public school or government schools anymore. And so its true meaning has been lost. And it is the ultimate truth of the universe. In short, liberty is to go about and create your life as you will, subject only to the equal rights of others. And that's the general idea. But as you unpack it, it's a little bit more than that. Liberty begins with the idea of self-ownership, that your body, your thoughts, your mind, the creations of your hands with materials you own, they're yours. And you're under no obligation to share any of them with anybody. And no one has a right to any of that without your permission. You own yourself. But self-ownership, requires that if you're going to own yourself, well, then you got to take care of yourself. It's not anybody else's job to take care of yourself. It's your job. And to the extent you're able, after you've been raised by parents to take care of yourself, to teach you to take care of yourself, then you have to become self-reliant. And self-reliance requires private property. You need to make your food somehow, and you need dirt to do it. And you need tools to work the dirt, and you need seed, and you need a way to harvest and preserve and consume and distribute what you produce, if you're a farmer, or anything else. And so private property is another key element of liberty. But private property means exclusive control. If someone else has control over, quote unquote, your property, it's really not yours. And we find ourselves now in a country where you don't have exclusive control over anything, not even your body. And this is the result of endless regulation. And it needs to be repealed. And it's the reason our economy and our world is collapsing now like a house of cards, because these principles have been denied. So liberty begins with self-ownership, which implies self-reliance, which requires private property. And it also includes the right of association. You have, in other words, the right, when you're born, and you've been raised and you've developed a certain degree of understanding, or sufficient understanding to say, oh, you want me to be part of your government? Okay, well, let me ask you, what is your government actually going to provide to me? What services am I going to get from your government? Because government obviously produces nothing, but it provides services. So what services are you going to provide? All right, so you're going to take care of the sewers and the water plants and the streets, and protect me with a police department, and if my house burns, a fire department, or if I need help or emergency services. All right, well, how much is this going to cost? And you have a right to understand that before you agree to be part of it. And you can say, well, you know, that's kind of expensive. I don't really think I want to be part of your society. I don't really want to be part of your system. Or I want to be part of this, but not all of the other. I think this is efficient. I don't mind paying for this service and this cost, but I'm not going to be part of this other stuff. You have that right. Now, they try to bundle it all up so that you have to choose all or nothing. And they don't even give you the choice anymore. When did any of you ever consent to these unreadable volumes of laws? Our Constitution, it's 27 amendments, 580 volumes of Supreme Court cases, each volume containing between 30 and 100 cases. The United States Code, which is 55 feet of shelf space, and the library doesn't have a page count. The Code of Federal Regulation, the IRS Code, 47,000 pages. The Federal Register, which has no page count, but it's the rules that lay out the implementation of all the laws that are passed. And then you go to the states, and in California we have our Constitution and its amendments, its Supreme Court interpretations, and then you have our title system. I think we have 29 titles now, some 280,000 words. The bottom line is you have the federal, the state, the